All right, so another Dell Optiplex build. So what's going on, guys? Dan with PC Tech Hustle coming at you with another video. As you can see, we got ourselves another Dell Optiplex build, and actually a bit of a continuation build that we put together in my last video where we went out and did a lot of parts hunting to get these parts now that you see on hand. So speaking of that, we're going to go through the build process in this video, as well as at the end of the video cover some benchmarks that will hopefully validate my claim here, being that it could be a fit gaming PC. So let's get cracking into that, coming at you right now. Alrighty guys, and before we get into the whole build process and parts review and benchmarks and all that stuff, I just want to make a quick mention that if you guys are new here and you enjoy Dell Optiplex builds like this or any other PC tech related content, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and don't forget to click that bell notification icon. That way you're informed of whenever I drop my latest content. So let's get the camera a little closer here so we can discuss in brief detail what we have sitting here on the table. Alrighty guys, so for full disclosure of all the parts that we picked up here in this video, make sure you check out the video in the top right hand corner where I go over all the parts hunting and why we chose the particular parts that we're about to go over here. But aside from that, we got here is the Dell Optiplex, which this model that we picked up was the Dell Optiplex 3020. So I'll open it up here real quick for you guys just to show you what we got inside. Alrighty, inside we got basically what looks like your standard Dell Optiplex. So we got a kind of a weak power supply that we're going to replace. Underneath the cooler we got an i3. Yeah, you know, I'd really love to have an i5 or an i7, but we just couldn't find one for a good price point. We'll see how that does, obviously through the benchmarks. As well as we got an auxiliary 500 gig hard drive that we can use for some auxiliary storage, and possibly we may need it for some games like Modern Warfare. So what else remains to be said here is basically you got your standard Dell Optiplex. Now, one caveat here that I'd like to point out too is the 8-pin motherboard power connector here. So that is a proprietary Dell thing, which is easily overcomeable by purchasing an adapter here, which I'll show you here real quick. So here's the adapter that you would need. It's a 8-pin to 24-pin standard power supply adapter. So these you typically need for the Dell Optiplexes that require that on their motherboard power pin out. Some of them have a 24-pin, others have this 8-pin. So be on the lookout for that. If you're purchasing a Dell Optiplex, make sure you know that's what you got. But if you do get one, no big deal. These power adapters are actually pretty cheap. I got this one on Amazon for like 10 bucks, and after some more fine research, I found you can find them for about $5-6 bucks. I'll leave some links in the description for you guys so you can pick those up if that's what you need. So for one other real caveat that we're only really going to run into here is we don't have an extra data SATA cable. Now you can rob it here from the DVD drive if you want to. I would say that's just fine, because what really use do we have for those drives anymore these days anyway. But if you want to keep that, you know, factor in buying in another SATA cable if you don't have one on hand. These are usually like, I don't know, $5 for like a 5-pack or whatever. I'll leave a link in the description as well, so if case you don't have any of that on hand, you can go grab that. Next we have power supply, which is going to be another major component that we're going to need to do some upgrades, because we're putting in a video card that's going to require more power. So that's plain and simple, we need more power. So as I mentioned, I have this Arts Game 500 watt power supply. It is a part that actually I did kind of a small little unboxing and review of, which I'll put up in the top right hand corner. But this seems to be a pretty good enough power supply for a budget system that we're going after here. I don't see any particular reason to think that this power supply is sketchy by any means. We did some testing on it, didn't seem to prove any particular reason to not trust it. Picked this part up for 40 bucks on Amazon, so pretty good deal. Go pick yourself up one if that's what you're looking for. But this should get the job done, being 500 watts and 80+ bronze certified. So next item we have on the parts list, which we can kind of consider as being more of an auxiliary or optional part, is the SSD. So right here we got an inland SSD 240 gig drive that we picked up on Amazon for $27. Now this technically you don't need to get the system operational, because we do have an included 500 gig auxiliary drive in the Dell Optiplex, so you can save yourself $27 if you're really trying to get on the budget. And if you did that, you would be well under $200 for this build. But I really highly suggest using an SSD, just because your boot times will be so much faster, and some of your smaller games you can put on this guy and you'll thank yourself later due to the fast load time. So note that it's an optional part, but a highly suggested part from me. All right, so then last item on the parts list here being the video card. Now Now this is also considerably an optional part, though you definitely need one to get gaming, but by optional I mean just what you want to go buy. The real main things is what really fits inside a Dell Optiplex, especially if you don't want to do any case modification, which we are not going to do in this video. We are just going to strictly get what works and slam it in there. But know that if it fits, you can kind of opt to go with a more powerful video card. I'd say keep it within reason because there's no need to get crazy with the Dell Optiplex build. But this is good value, and we picked it up for $80–85 on eBay. But here's a pretty sweet little thing that we did happen to luck out on. Was the listing actually said this was for a RX 570 4 gig. This is actually an 8 gig model. So we got a video card cheap, and actually this isn't the first time this has happened to me, where people will just list thinking a 4 gig model, or they don't know a whole lot about video cards. So you might get lucky like I did, and it could be a good little win for you. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that. Alrighty guys, so that quickly covers the parts here that we're going to be using to build up this Dell Optiplex, and I wanted to do this video in a little bit different fashion, being that kind of explain things as we go along as well, kind of more of a tutorial style, because I did have a lot of people with comments that are asking, I don't know what to do with like the power supply, like first time builders. So I realized as I did that video, I was kind of just doing it kind of in a montage format, not necessarily a step-by-step. So we're going to go through this more in a step-by-step yet fun way, so that way it will be beneficial for you guys that are trying to do this maybe for the first time. So let's get the camera close and start building away. Alrighty guys, so as I mentioned, tutorial style, so we're just going to kind of do the quick hits and try to get you guys aligned with what you need to know about how to do this and get yourself up and running real fast. But like with any Optiplex, we're going to open it up here as we did earlier just to show you what we're dealing with. And some Optiplexes might be clean and good to go and you just get into the parts installations, or you might have kind of a case like what we have here, is a bit of some surface dust. I mean, it's not too bad, but it's definitely noticeable, and I don't really like dirty systems, especially since this will be a resale system. So I'm going to clean it up a little bit. Do that how you want. You could use compressed air either via a can that you go out and buy, say at like Walmart or something, or Best Buy, or if you got an air compressor like I do, just give it a casual spray out. This isn't going to need much. I'm just getting rid of some surface dust. So I'm going to clean it up a little bit and come right back to this as soon as we're done. Okay, so now we're pretty much cleaned up inside. We start with the what I call deconstruction phase, which isn't going to be really all that much for a Dell Optiplex, and mostly that's just going to be the power supply removal, since pretty much everything else we're going to keep inside. So 4 screws on the back and a tab to push down inside once you have the 4 screws removed, and that should just slide the power supply right out. So let's get cracking on that. Alrighty, so next step we got is installing our new power supply into the system. And by the way guys, if you have any particular questions on how to do system building in a full in-depth tutorial style, I do have a tutorial that is tailored towards building even though it's a Ryzen gaming PC, almost every single concept applies here. So if you guys are a little bit in question certain things, or you feel like I didn't cover something particularly well in this video, go check that out real quick. So this is just the quick and dirty how to get things into the PC, being a Dell Optiplex in its own format. Alrighty guys, so kind of at a bit of a stopping point here. So we've got some of the main cables ran. We got the adapter attached to our 8-pin and 24-pin for a power supply for the motherboard. We also got the CPU power attached here. It's kind of not fantastic. Probably spent some time obviously doing some cable management here, but this is just the quick and dirty. Also we got the PCIe cable ran kind of through around the drive cages up here, where there would be, I guess, an auxiliary CD-ROM or DVD drive, so that way we kind of got a good spot to connect up the video card. So also one thing here I want to cover here, just to kind of point it out to you guys if you're not familiar with Dell Optiplexes, is there's this proprietary power connection that's running off of the motherboard that actually runs over to power the hard drives, which you have 2 SATA cables for, so, or you at least have a breakaway cable here. But I thought that was interesting. So it actually means that we don't really have any need for the provided SATA power cables that the power supply comes with. So we can kind of neatly, you know, bunch them together and probably tuck them away inside here for cable management. But I guess that's kind of neat in a way because it provides some cabling already for you, but then I guess you can also look at it as well. It's extra, even more cables you have to deal with, but at least I guess these aren't plugged into anything in the way. But anyway, so what we're gonna move on to next is we're gonna get the SSD plugged in. So we got power here for it already. We just need to power in the SATA cable, the data cable, which we only have one remaining left here, and then it would be basically onto the video card. So let's do that real quick. So easy enough, we got the SSD shoved in here. You don't really need to mount these, and for the sake of this build, I'm not really gonna do that. I have some solutions with that. You know, if you got another one of these drive caddies, that would be the perfect solution, but I don't have another one of them. Secondly, you can just use some Velcro, but this is actually kind of just, I mean, it's pretty stationary. It's not going anywhere. Cables are in kind of out of the way, so I'm just gonna go with it. And then as you can see, I shoved some of my SATA cables that I don't need back into towards the back of the case. So honestly, we're getting real close here. So honestly, next thing to do here is we're getting real close is to just come in here and remove these PCIe expansion brackets. So we got two here. Looks like that's about what we need. And these just pop out, obviously, as you saw. By just pushing down this button to release the bracket that kind of holds everything in. Well, another one fell out because of that. But then we're gonna throw in the video card here next. So let's grab that. All right, so video card here we got, and key thing to note with this particular brand of video card being the XFX brand is it fits pretty much without having to do any modifications. And I believe we should be able to get this in without the back plate, though we'll see if that's needed or not. But the main thing is it fits lengthwise, so we don't have to draw out the cage, and we can use the cage for, you know, storage mounting options. Alrighty guys, so we got one particular issue here that I just want to cover with you guys if you happen to use this as a complete copied build guide. The XFX video card works fine as far as length and height, barely, you know, with the memory. But the thing that we're having an issue now with is this latch that keeps the video card or the PCI expansion slots closed and firm against the chassis. So we can't close this. It's just impeding on the shroud of the video card. So here's my theory and what we should really do to resolve this particular situation. If we take a look at the back of the chassis here, we have where these normal brackets would sit here, right? So we have ventilation for the back of the chassis. So what's going to end up happening when you have a video card here mounted, it's going to be pulling air through these no matter what, even with these PCIe brackets. I mean, they're not dust filters, so dust and everything else is going to get through it no matter what, if you have these here or not. So really it's just an aesthetic piece that kind of just matches the build theme. So what I suggest here is, if this isn't a game stopper or showstopper using this video card, just go ahead and use it, but probably note that, you know, you're not going to be able to close this little latch thing here, which again, I don't think it's a big deal because you can just take these things off. I think they just kind of rip off here with the aluminum, the thin aluminum. But here's a pro tip for you here. Since we don't have anything, since this is designed to hold an expansion device in slot firmly against the chassis, what we can end up doing is, since we have some extra screws here from our power supply when we removed it, just grab a couple of those and zip those in to the side of the chassis. It will be kind of tight at first, but that'll hold the video card in place, so you don't have to worry about sag on the PCIe slot or the video card backing out or whatever. So now the bracket of the video card is firm, tight against the chassis, and we basically just kind of don't really need this thing anymore, so I'm going to take it off. Then aside from those minor complications, all we got left to do to finish this build is plug in our PCIe power to our video card, and we are done. Minus some cable management, obviously. Alrighty guys, so there are your benchmarks of our little i3 system here, and I was a little bit hesitant about the i3 just because we would create some CPU bottlenecks, which you did see here in the benchmarks. 1% and 0.1% lows in some of the games were not very good at all, and there was some kind of stuttering feel with some of the games, but then also some of the other games were just completely fine and performed really, really well. Those games being CSGO, Valorant, Apex Legends. So those games, heck, this system is completely fine, and if you just want to get gaming quick on a budget, then this is it, and you don't have to worry about doing any upgrades. But if you are after some better gameplay, say like in something like Fortnite or Modern Warfare, which are a bit more CPU demanding, Modern Warfare definitely a lot more demanding, I wouldn't really recommend going the i3 route that I did here. Really, I just grabbed it because it was cheap, but you do have a bit of an upgrade path. We can go up to the i5, which would be probably, I would say, the most best upgrade, I would say, to kind of get this better of a gaming system, just because once you bump up to the i7, which would be a i7 4770 or even a 4790, those are still really expensive out on even the used markets, and it just doesn't make any value sense, and it'll drive up the cost astronomically on this system. So although you can do it, I would say only do it if you're able to get like a smoking hot deal like in your local used markets or something like that. I'd say, yeah, I would definitely say if you're just after some kind of more basic gaming type stuff, CSGO, Valorant, things like that, then this thing is absolutely there for you and you don't have to do a darn thing. And as you can see, it was pretty easy plug and play. Though I want to mention one thing here as far as plug and play. You guys might notice that I have a different power supply sitting up here. This is an EVGA 600 watt. And I actually picked that power supply up off of EVGA B-Stock for $27. So it actually came in quite a bit cheaper than the Arse Game power supply. But here's the difference. And I am not blaming Arse Game at all for what the issues I ran into with this system. It didn't seem to like the 24 to 8 pin adapter that you have to use for this particular type of Optiplex brand, being the 3020. For some reason, it wouldn't just keep stable power to the motherboard, and I finally eliminated the factor being the 8 to 24 pin, so it's not any bad knocks on Arse Game, just because I know that power supply works just fine on some other systems, and we've tested that as you saw in the video before. So not anything to be really scared of with that power supply. Just know if you're doing it with a 3020 like this, where it has the wonky 8-pin motherboard power connector, then you can't really use that power supply, so that luckily I was able to snag a EVGA power supply off B-Stock. But other than that, guys, before we go, make sure you do the YouTube thing, right? Give me a like if you enjoyed this content, and let me know in the comments, is this i3 a still viable gaming option in today's 2020 gaming? I'd say with some particular titles, yeah, it definitely is, but let me know in the comments if you think I'm crazy for recommending something like that. However, if you want to go check out a couple of my other videos, I got a couple of them right here for you, one also being the previous video we did on this system on how we actually went about picking out parts and to successfully get that stuff ordered and built now, as you see here. Lastly, with all that said, and if you guys have stuck with the video this long at this point, then I'd like to say thank you for tuning into this one. I appreciate your time, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.